back to Realcomm Live. Joe Aamidor here again. I'm here with Bayron Lopez today.
Yes, sir.
Bayron, if you want to do a quick intro and also introduce us to Kilroy.
Sure. My name is Bayron Lopez. I am the Director of Operational Technology at Kilroy, and my focus is on the building infrastructure. How do we take all the building systems and make sure they are protected, converged, operational, and ensure that our buildings can provide a good working environment for all of our tenants?
Yeah, that makes sense. I know when we were preparing for this this session, one of the things that struck me is that you've at Kilroy had a lot of experience deploying smart building technology at scale. Not just we piloted a solution at a floor, but you also have done a fair bit around merging the IT and OT infrastructure.
Correct.
So maybe, I think that's a really compelling story. Maybe if you want to share some of the details there.
Sure. So my background is in IT. I'm part of the IT department, and we were lucky enough that Kilroy had the foresight to create the operational technology team within IT.
Yeah.
So that's what I've been leading for the past couple of years. So taking the IT standards, policies, procedures that we know work and are true and tested, and taking those into the OT environment, helping our engineers, our physical security teams, our sustainability teams create that merger between technology and the work that they're doing in the field, in the grounds.
Yeah, that makes sense. Are there any examples of specific types of technologies you've deployed where maybe they previously were very much within the OT ecosystem and they've been moved over to kind of this, you didn't say converged, but I tend to think.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
So that was the hyper focus of our mandate, was to converge all the systems, figure out what was dispersed throughout the buildings, make sure that those came into a converged IT OT network that we can manage, protect, and then taking water detection, taking access controls, taking cameras, the BMS, and making sure that they're playing together, but we also have control over those. So all the subsystems that existed in the building are still there. They're just working under a enterprise level infrastructure that we've put together.
That makes sense. And were there a lot of cases where the individual pieces of equipment, you were replacing them to something that was compatible with the IT infrastructure, or were there cases where there was just maybe middleware or some connector where you said, we can keep what we have, we just need the ability? I'm kind of thinking, it's probably a bit of everything.
It's kind of like that scene in Armageddon where they get their armadillo and they're taking things out and saying, this should work like this should be reconfigured. So that's what we did for our buildings. Right? We identified locations where we can recycle infrastructure. So let's say access control, right? Not every building needs a server there.
Right.
So you can run with access control panels connected to a system somewhere else. So we saw that we had a ton of access control servers. A lot of them were coming up for upgrades or refreshes. And if you have clusters of those things, can be $40,000+. So if you don't need that server, you're taking that out, you're taking the maintenance out, you're reducing your infrastructure costs and reducing points of failure. So now you're able to shrink the infrastructure, but also make sure that it's more reliable, because now you have proper backups, you have proper deployment, proper infrastructure in place.
Yeah, and maybe one question as you're talking through everything, and we go to that point on scale, maybe give the audience a bit of a sense of the work you've done to bring the OT systems onto the IT network. How many buildings, over what time period? What maybe quantify the scale a little bit, because I think it's impressive.
Depending on who you ask, Kilroy has between 100 and 120 buildings, but one of those buildings for campus can be a set of 8, right? So
eight individual buildings.
8 individual buildings within one campus. So trying to deploy the infrastructure across the whole 8 buildings, redundancy control, making sure that the BMSs that were maybe dispersed are now talking together. And that's allowed us to be able to make these campuses smarter, but also more technologically connected, right? So we were able to do that for our entire portfolio in about 2.5 years, taking the infrastructure that was there and saying, look, these are unmanaged switches, get those out, bring in the managed switches, create the VLANs, work with the vendors to make sure that subnets are updated, that IP addresses are changed, and then do that across our portfolio first to establish the foundation, and then layer on the bells and whistles of sensors, of access control, of cameras, of all the fancy stuff that comes in afterwards.
Got it. So after you have converged the networks, then it creates this surface for you to expand data you're collecting. And I guess, I imagine you planned to do it that way, because the thinking was we don't want to expand to even more data sources before we have this platform.
Sure, we planned it.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
the ideal concept was BMS. BMS was the focus. Let's get that protected, and then security said, well, what about our systems? And then sustainability and this and that, and we ended up with opening a can of worms, but it was good because people came forward and they gave us their systems and said, look, we need help.
Yeah.
We want help. We've been asking for help. Now that you're here, can you help us? And our team has done that. So we were able to lay the foundation and say, look, all your systems can work on here. Now let's start adding artificial intelligence to our cameras. Let's start adding an SD-WAN that we can take video from all of our different regions into one location and be able to stream across those solutions for our security team. So we laid the foundation, and now we're adding the layers to the cake of making it nicer, making it that people can work there, and make it more flexible for our tenants as well.
I like the analogy, layers of the cake. One of the things we also talked about was just how you thought through the ROI question, right? You hear the vendors on the trade show or trade floor, they'll quantify, oh, this building, our solution saved this much money, this was the ROI. But at the same time, you could argue every building probably has a different ROI depending on current state, where they're at, how the building performs today. I think when we spoke, though, you had a couple interesting points around how you thought about ROI going in, how you thought of ROI once you had converge the networks, and I think I'd love for you to tell that story.
Well, the initial thought was it's brand reputational, right? We're going to protect ourselves. That's going to be the ROI. We're not going to get hacked. We're not going to get hit.
And it's cybersecurity.
And cybersecurity piece, right? So Target got us all up on our heels and making sure that we were strong. When we found that, we were able to start putting in networks and then figuring out that, look, access control water, they all have their own different internet line. They're all paying $350 a line. Let's reduce that. Let's collapse all those 7 lines into one central location, and now we're having economies of scale. We had different systems for access controls or cameras or video. Let's standardize those places so that we're not spending different amount of money and different amount of things to recreate the wheel, right? If you have a standard, you can use that standard to make yourself more efficient and then save money that way and reduce your cost. We now have our engineering teams can work remotely. During COVID, right? A lot of your support staff would want to come in, and you get billed for that truck roll, 2 hours minimum. Look, it's all done digitally now. You can come in. You don't have to charge me for those 2 hours of the truck roll, plus the 2 hours that you're going to be on site, plus the 2 hours that you're going to drive back. Just charge me for the work that you actually did, and we can track that time as well.
So you went into it with very much a kind of a cybersecurity-centric view of, especially reputationally, there would be a lot of costs, quantifiable, intangible though as well. If our building was to be hacked, the tenants would lose trust. It would be problematic. It's the quote, you never have a second chance to make a first impression. So if somebody gets hacked, they kind of just, that sticks with them. But it sounds like there's a lot of actual hard money quantification around the converged network after the fact.
I mean, even just our utility metering project, right? That allowed us to reduce our engineering costs at one building by $14,000 a year. Just because our engineers are not walking around anymore. It's all digitally being pulled by the network. So there are dollars that you're going to save there.
Have you found, from the point of view of the individual engineers, another theme that I've heard, I've seen for a while, but I've heard it here, there's very much a talent shortage in our industry. And you could argue technology, while some vendors say they don't specifically say we can replace all the humans. I think the point is there's a lot of automation we can do, though you could argue maybe augmentation is a better way to think of it. We still have the staff. There's still things that you want the staff to do. Real estate, in a lot of cases, your point about reputation, it's also a people business, right? Having people running the building, being there in front of tenants is useful.
And that's a good point, right? Because technology is there to augment the job, not replace you, right? So if you look at the way that we use it for security, right? We've had roving security officers around the building, right? Why don't we take, what we've done is we've taken that security officer, we've said, look, now this is your security operations centers. You can see the cameras across. You don't have to walk around. Now we're elevating their skill set. We're making them more marketable. If at some point they choose to go somewhere else, that's on them. But we're elevating their skill set, making sure that they feel more comfortable within the building, that they feel trusted by the technology, and that they're using it to what it's supposed to be deployed for. So it's engaging, teaching, and letting people know that there are solutions out there I come from a IT engineering background,
Yeah.
so I always thought I was going to go work for the big engineering firms, right? But real estate wasn't really that chip in my head.
Yeah.
But now that I'm in it, it's beautiful.
Yeah,
It's
I think
great.
that's another thing I've heard a lot of people who are in real estate didn't necessarily think of that as being where they were going to work, but they ended up coming to the industry and loving it.
Yeah.
Did you find with the staff themselves this technology that helps augment what they're doing? Was there a transition where at first there was some resistance or I'm not sure this is really going to help me or I'm doing things differently and then to wow, this really actually helps me?
Even just for me, changing monitors at home, right, or at work, that's a transition. So for them, it's definitely a big one. But when you teach them that it's going to be helpful for their job, they're going to be able to work more productive from home. It's going to give them the resources, and then we're also going to help them train and be more marketable, just in case they're going somewhere else down the road. I think that's helpful. There's a period of time that they have to adjust to, but once they start going for it, even our older guys who are more the wrench and hammer kind of guys, they start picking it up. They start getting excited about technology, about data, and that's what I like to see.
That's a great thing. That's a great kind of inspirational kind of tale, and maybe the last one. I know we don't have too much time, but I wanted to ask. I tend to think of Kilroy as being a little bit ahead of on the adoption curve, if you will, or adoption cycle. Any advice to those who might be watching who are thinking, man, I got to get where Bayron and Kilroy are, but I'm not there yet, admittedly.
I think it's going to be a daunting challenge, right?
Yeah.
When you first see it, it's going to be a mountain that you're going to seem, unclimbable. But as you start going there piece by piece, step by step, you're going to get there.
Yeah.
And there's the support of all just your employees, but also our colleagues, right? We're all friends, we're all family, we're all here to support each other. So don't be afraid to reach out to any of us. Participate and don't be taken down by the challenge. Accept it and just push forward through it.
Yeah, so don't minimize the effort that you're going to, but at the same time, don't think of it as a big monolithic thing to do as much as break it down into individual tasks, and then engage in your community. Come to Realcomm.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Become part of the rec.
Yeah, that's great. Byron, thank you so much for joining me. It was great to speak to you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.